Hey, what's up, folks? Matthew Bellman and Ryan Kostrowski here with the DFS 5-pack. Clearly, there's no DFS to talk about. So what we're going to do today is kind of roll out, I don't know, like a first take, undisputed type of format where we just discuss sports subjects. Not as much of a debate, more of a discussion type of apparatus. We did not prep for this. And what I mean by that is we each came up with a handful of questions that we're going to put the other person on. So it may take a couple seconds to think it over. But I didn't want it to be totally staged, and I wanted it to be more organic. I have 5 and you have 5. We'll pose the question. Maybe we'll need to look something up because I don't have set answers necessarily for mine either. I don't know if you do. But we just want to talk some sports and hopefully provide any version of entertainment that we can.
Amen to all the above. Some of mine are like a little bit deeper. Some of mine are just straight up, quick answer. So why don't you start it off? I'm interested to hear where you're going.
All right. Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes? No, I'm kidding. That is a joke from a video from last year. Clearly, we're not going to get into that one.
At this point, let's be fair.
2 years ago. All right. So I'm going to start you with baseball. I'm going to put you into your comfort zone right away. If you are a GM, based off the information that we have through both of their careers, knowing that they're both a little bit different at this point because they played for different periods of time, and I gave you the number 1 pick tomorrow, and you could draft Ken Griffey Jr. or Mike Trout, who would you pull the trigger on?
It's a great question. Man, I feel like all the advanced numbers say Trout. They just do, even though I think it's one of those questions like you used to always say, like, you want cheeseburgers or tacos?
Yes.
You're like, go wrong. I mean, they're 2 of the top, potentially when it's all said and done, 2 of the top 10, 15 best players ever. Griffey was transcendent in a lot of the ways. I guess in a lot of the ways we talked about like Allen Iverson, although in just a much cleaner sense. Really drew to all fan bases, all races alike. Really was the first person I ever saw wear his hat backwards on the baseball field. Really started a movement there. Both soft smoking guys. As far as fielding goes, Trout is awesome, but I think Griffey's a slightly better fielder. He's one of the best center fielders of all time.
Not slightly. I mean, there's an argument that Griffey's the greatest defensive outfielder that we've ever seen. I don't know if you can legitimately say that. There are really good defensive outfielders, Andrew Jones, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say that Trout's a good fielder. Griffey is one of the greatest. However, like looking into the numbers, though, like offensively, as great as Ken Griffey is, Mike Trout is better by a decent amount.
He is. Again, now offense is Trout's played in a much more offensive era. Not that Griffey's era wasn't offensively minded, but Trout's kind of in the middle of that. Well, actually, that's not fair to say. Griffey was in the steroid era, so take that back. It's a great question. It's hard for me to answer right now because we've seen Trout every day for the past however many years. It's been a minute since Griffey's played. And even his last few years, like his swan song wasn't very good. His Cincinnati and White Sox days left a lot to be desired. I think he had that one really good year as a Red, but other than that, didn't do much. In his Seattle days, though, he was like the number 1 draw across baseball. Great question. I lean Trout.
So I brought up the question, and then I went back to look because I wasn't sure what my answer was going to be because I knew in my mind that Ken Griffey's a better defensive outfielder, but that Mike Trout I thought was going to be a little bit better offensively. The part to me that kind of made my decision is just looking at these MVP numbers over here. Griffey won 1 MVP, an amazing year. It was 646 slug, 56 home runs, 147 RBIs. All those numbers are off the hook, but he finished second another time. And then I look at Mike Trout, who in his career has been first or second every single year with the exception of the year that he got hurt. And he still got 4th that season. It's a big difference. And yes, Griffey's the better fielder, but Mike Trout is on a level. He's already got more career stolen bases than Ken Griffey Jr., I think. So he throws in the ability to steal bases. He's got a batting average, if you want to still look at that, is 20 points higher. And again, that's pushed down a little bit by how bad Ken Griffey was in the second half of his career by comparison. But man, he fell off a cliff after the age of 29. So we can't judge Trout based on what he did in his 30s because we haven't seen it yet. But I struggle to see Mike Trout having this kind of a dip.
I agree, but if you would have said that about Ken Griffey Jr. at the time too, I would have said no way.
Definitely.
Also. So I agree.
That's kind of the knock on Griffey, though, right? Like he never kept himself in great enough shape.
You're right. He got like big.
Yes.
So, all right, yeah, great question. Great starting off question.
So I wanted to hit you with baseball first because I know that's your number one, your bread and butter, your favorite.
So I'm going to hit you with baseball, basketball, and football. This is a Milwaukee question. I'm sure you've seen those questions, floating around of three guys, like let's say Paul George, Jimmy Butler, and let's just say Kawhi for argument's sake. Start one, bench one, cut one. You familiar with that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Aaron Rodgers, Giannis, Christian Yelich. Hypothetically speaking, start one, bench one, cut one. If you could only, it makes you get what I'm saying.
Okay. It's different because we're playing different sports. Sure. I will say I'm going to start by starting Giannis. Right now, I feel that his influence over wins and losses on his team is the greatest of those three players.
I agree.
Am I taking him like today, like March 16th, 2020?
I was thinking about that. I don't think it's fair to say like today going forward. I think it's what I'm trying to say is like you get the careers of careers of the first two guys and the other one's like a drop off.
Okay, so let me answer it two ways then. If I'm going today, modern day, these guys at their current level, I'm starting Giannis. I'm cutting Aaron Rodgers because he's clearly on the back nine of his career and he's just not as good as he was, say, 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm going to bench Christian Yelich because to me, he's as good as they come, not named Mike Trout in MLB. But also baseball players just don't have the same influence over wins and losses. Hence the reasons Mike Trout, Ken Griffey Jr., and Barry Bonds, three of the greatest players we've ever seen, have 0 rings. Now, for the totality of their career, yes. I'm going to start Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to bench Giannis and cut Christian Yelich.
I figure that's where you might go. And I think it's just a great question because it really speaks to the star power of Milwaukee sports. That's very impressive, that threesome right there. Matter of fact, it might be like, you look around sports. I wouldn't take any other threesome for any other city over that.
No, it would be difficult too, unless like
it's hard, I guess, like LA because they have so many.
That's where I was going.
Yeah. So, because you have just too many teams there. But even there, like, they don't have the quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. They have LeBron and Trout.
Aaron Donald, though.
Yeah, true.
Because Aaron Donald might be the best football player. Even though he doesn't play the sexiest of the positions.
LeBron.
Mike Trout, Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
There's an argument there.
Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger for good measure.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Trout's still the best, though.
For sure.
Okay. That's an interesting question. I think that kind of gives you where I stand. Like right now, Giannis has the greatest outcome. It affects the game in the largest way of those guys because Rodgers just isn't as good as he once was. He's still good, but not nearly as good as he once was. But for their careers, I mean, Aaron Rodgers did it for so long and at such a high level. Now, while Giannis is pacing out that way, you never know where things are going to go.
Agreed.
All right. We got one down. Next up, both guys at their peak or both things at their peak right now. Who wins? The best of the Jordan Bulls team or the best of the Curry Durant Warriors teams in a game? Best of 7.
I mean, that's a classic question, right? And I feel like if you ask me this, the legacy and this nostalgia of the Bulls, I'm not going to lie, it is wearing off. You've got younger generations who never saw them. They weren't in the age of social media. I remember them, and they took out a lot of great teams. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to give it to the Warriors team. Probably the best team on paper I've ever seen. Maybe the only team I'd pick against that Bulls team because I never would want to pick against Michael Jordan. But when you look at that Golden State team, you've got, 2 top 15 players ever, maybe, first ballot for sure, unanimous Hall of Famers. Then you've got 2 other guys who are, top 100 players of all time, if nothing else. Klay Thompson probably even better than that. And on that Bulls team, you know, in my opinion, the Bulls team was awesome, and you start and end with Michael Jordan. However, the guys outside of him, you know, except for, say, Scottie Pippen, weren't nearly the guys that Golden State had. And then also, I just think that the talent, like in everything else in life, is better now than it was even in Jordan's era. The players are just better. The athletes are better. Everything's better, bigger, stronger. It was tougher for the Warriors to do what they did. Now, that's not taking anything away from the Bulls, because those guys were pretty damn good in that day too. And it wasn't like he was playing in the 60s and 70s. I mean, he was in the 90s crushing these guys. So maybe the only team I'd pick against the Bulls, and I never would want to pick against Jordan. Like, I wouldn't bet it. But if I had to choose, I would pick Golden State. And I think you would too.
I would too. And for me, the argument comes down to this, and that is you can't trade 2s and 3s. Like, as great as those Bulls teams were, they did not have the prolific three-point shooting and the abundancy. And that is kind of the argument of the difference in the era.
Yeah.
You know, advanced analytics have pushed everything into the paint and everything in the three-point shooting because they just never thought about it that way back in the day. And now that we know statistically that's the right move, that's why other teams, you know, choose to do it. You still take your mid-range 2s when you have to. But also from like a schematic standpoint, like we forget, like Andre Iguodala, he ain't going to stop Jordan or Pippen, but he's going to be able to really, really slow them down. The same thing goes with Draymond Green. You double up those guys with those guys right there. The Warriors were weakest on the inside, right? Well, that's the one area the Bulls they weren't great. They were great in the mid-range. You know, they ran that great triangle offense and everything like that, but there's a couple of individual defenders on the Warriors that are at least going to make them work for it. Now, Michael and Scottie, they can try to do their best to take out Kevin Durant, and Pippen could probably do as good of a job on Durant as anybody could. But you still are left with like Klay Thompson and things like that. And, you know, the third banana for the Bulls, whether it was Kukoc, Horace Grant, or Dennis Rodman, was never that quite, you know, that kind of a threat. So I would choose the Warriors.
I will say about the Bulls, though, like Dennis Rodman has a lot of Draymond qualities.
Oh,
like,
yeah, definitely.
He doesn't have like, okay, I don't think he has quite like the feel for the game, but he's like bigger inside and like even more of like obviously he's probably the best rebounder ever.
Yeah, pound for pound, inch for inch too, for sure. Like Andre Drummond is like 7 inches taller than Dennis Rodman. Barkley was pretty darn good in his own right. Both guys at 6'6", 6'7", who really just did it on hustle, moxie, the ability to box out. And the difficult part about this question too is, you know, how do you phrase it? Because we brought this up the other day when talking about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was not a great three-point shooter. But if that's where the NBA had gone, I say with great confidence, Michael Jordan would have turned himself into a great three-point shooter because nobody really has the will to win like MJ, right? So if he had been the man in the 2010 era, 2020 era, I'm sure he would be better than the 30% three-point shooter that he probably was for his career. He would have made himself be that way.
I agree.
So I'm with you, but it's a difficult question that deserves some nuance. The other team I would put in there, because I can't really evaluate like the Bill Russell Celtics. I never watched them. You know, I watched very limited of the Showtime Lakers, who could also be up in that argument, but also the Shaq and Kobe Lakers that we talked about. They were pretty good, and that would be another fight that I would like to throw into this mix.
I would too. That's another great one.
And I think they all beat all the Spurs teams.
I do too.
Okay.
Although I still think that the Spurs teams don't get as much credit as they should. But
they're like a longevity thing, right? Like they were always good, and they came up in big moments. But for me, like the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Bulls, they were all just a little bit better.
I agree.
Over longevity a little bit.
Okay, I agree, but also like longevity, like we talked about it on the last video, how hard it is to win a title. Like they did it. Like, and you're right, they were never like the best team ever when they did it. But like, you don't need to be the best team ever. Yeah. Like, you just need to be the best team that year.
I felt like they were the second best team in the league every year for like 20 years, it seems like. And they just happened to come up clutch and win the championship 5 times throughout those 20 years. Not saying that they weren't the best team a couple times, but it felt like they were always the second best team that just, because they were always there, they just happened to have the ball bounce their way a few years or just come up big at big moments.
I remember like when they first got Tim Duncan, though, like when David Robinson was still healthy. That's when I thought that when they won like their first ring, I thought they were really good.
All right. What's your next question?
All right, so this is kind of an easy one, but all I can think about over here as we talk about this stuff and make these videos is how bad I want sports to come back.
Oh,
So,
God, yes.
off the top of your head, what are you most excited for sports and DFS to come back? Like, where does your head go? What are you most excited for? Now, again, that question has a lot of open-endedness to it, simply because we don't know what will be back when this is over. Let's assume that everything is back. What would you most be excited for? I'm
We're
really
talking which individual sport?
anything. Like, what most tickles your fancy when I bring up that question? Like, what if it's the fact that you can just turn on the TV and watch sports? If it's whatever it is, what do you want most to come back?
For me, it's the craving of the structure. Now, that's a different answer for us because we work in the industry. Obviously we have, and thank you to our customers who still like are letting us, paying their bills every month right now, just because like I feel like it's out of the goodness of their heart. Thank you very much for that. But like the structure, the income, the having something to do in the morning, to not drinking 5 whiskeys at the end of the night just because out of pure boredom and I know I have nothing to get up for in the morning. Like if I was watching the Bucks play and I'd been evaluating DFS, I'd actually be tired and have a reason to go to bed. So for me, that's the structure. But overall, besides that, there is a real part of me not really missing playing the DFS part. And what I mean by that is it's 5 o'clock at night. I can still go do whatever I want. And I'm not worried about getting a lineup lock and stuff like that. That all being said, like I miss the daily videos. I miss talking about sports. I think that's a big thing for me. And it sucks because it happened at this time where the Bucks for me are moving right into the playoffs and the Brewers are about to start. I know you were really looking forward to baseball season, but for me, it's the structure is what I'm craving.
Yeah, I'm craving the structure also, no doubt about it. I want, and we'll talk about this like off air, even more structure when stuff comes back, even though there's no point to even talk about it because we don't know when that's going to happen. I miss that a lot too. I definitely do miss playing, man. Like not even like I just miss the action of it. And I know I'm playing that League of Legends stuff, but that's not it. You know what I mean? Like that's not it. I miss. I mean, we're in baseball season now. Like I miss the double slates, man. I miss the double write-ups. I miss the 12-10 early games. Like that's where my mind first goes. I don't really miss NBA all that much. If I were in your shoes, I'd be real pissed because my team was the best team in the league. So that sucks. For me, the NBA, I missed the playoffs. I wouldn't want to see the playoffs.
Oh
But
God, yes. I
no
was really
baseball,
looking forward to the playoffs.
no baseball's killing me. I'd give anything for like one of those. I mean, it seemed like last year, the year before that, however many years we've been together. If I told you like there's going to be a time during baseball season when like there's going to be nothing, like nothing. I would have never believed you had you told me that. Now here we are. It's just unreal. I miss baseball. If you didn't get that.
Yeah, I was extremely excited for the NBA playoffs, and not just because my Bucks were, one of the front runners, but
Well,
it
the
was
NBA
open this
playoffs
year,
are awesome.
right? And it was open this year. It was so open, even though I think everybody who's got 3 brain cells and watches the NBA with any kind of consistency knew that the teams, Milwaukee, LA, and LA were a cut above the rest. But we weren't crazy. We knew the Rockets and the Celtics and the Raptors. These teams all had a chance. It wasn't like in years past where it was like the Warriors and everybody else. Like you legitimately needed Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson to have injuries in order for somebody else to sneak in there. Or for LeBron, and this is pre-Kevin Durant, so as good as the Warriors were then, they weren't as good as they were with KD, to like just have a 3-game epic run where Kyrie played the best 3 games of his life and everything like that. It was open. Like Milwaukee and the Lakers and the Clippers were the favorite, but other teams could have won. They were in it.
Or just the East, man. I mean, LeBron had made the NBA Finals for what, like 8 straight years? I mean, like just the fact that he's gone from the East and there's other teams, coming for that throne. Obviously the team that won it all last year lost Kawhi. So yeah, I'm with you, man. It sucks that we're missing that. It's just I think about the thing I think about most, and then we'll go on to your next question is like whatever the day or two before this all started, and I'm like, man, do you think that like this is gonna affect us? I'm like, you're like, you didn't know, like I don't really buying it. Like it's a lot of the media hype, and I didn't disagree with you, but the thing that worried me was that Golden State was setting up to not have any fans, and then once the Gobert thing happened, it just all spiraled after that. It
It
was
was
done.
so quick after that, right?
Once like that game got canceled, it was like, oh, I was like, oh shit. Like, because
Yeah.
they would not do that unless like they absolutely had to. Then the later game was canceled. Then all the college games are getting canceled. At the moment. I mean, it'll be something I never forget.
I know and there's no end in sight that we know about. Like I told you, the governor of Wisconsin just announced like stay safe, stay at home, like extended out 40 days from today. And it's just like the idea of that is so far away.
And to your point, though, man, the only reason they didn't say 80 days is because they don't want people like freaking out. Because we both damn well know it's going to be more than 40 days.
It's man, like I said in the video earlier today, like if anybody just needs to chit chat, like if you're stuck at home, like this is rough. Like I will say right now, it's the perfect time to have my kids half the time, but then send them to their moms half the time. Because as much as I love those little things, just like with all my heart, and actually my daughter has been a champion throughout this whole thing, but she's so good at playing on her own. Like my son's losing his mind a little bit because like the rest of us, I'm losing my mind too. Like he needs to get out and move around. So hang with him for 2 days, get some company, send him over to his mom's for 2 days, and like get some time away from him because he needs to move around too.
It's rough, man. Like, I get along with my wife very well. We spend a lot of time together. We get along very well, but it wasn't supposed to be like this. Like, people weren't supposed to be together in the same house, in the same room, in the same spot for hours upon hours every day. We have a nice little routine where we try to just separate ourselves, but with nowhere to go, it's difficult, man. And you have no choice but to get on each
Well,
other.
you have a big enough house that you guys can actually separate too. Like imagine people who live in like a 1 bedroom apartment.
No, yeah. I mean, trust me, a lot of people have it way worse. I don't mean to be complaining over here. I just know that it's rough for me. So it's rough for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the one thing that we can all agree on. So there are still people living a pretty normal life, essential workers and stuff like that. But you still, I mean, like if you love restaurants and you can't go to one, that's
Yeah.
rough.
And
Like for me, I miss the gym.
dude, I miss the gym. The three things you just said. I miss the gym, I miss restaurants, and I miss sports. Like,
Yeah.
if they're like us being home, like I'm home too much right now. Even like when we're in our normal routine, I like to get out of the house at least like once a day just to do something. I can't really do that now. And with no sports, it's like, man, I'm feeling it. It's hard not to feel it.
It's funny to watch listening to people who don't care about sports like we do. All of a sudden, they're like, even I miss sports at this point. And it's just, you forget what a big deal it is for people's entertainment, all the jobs that it creates and everything like that, and all the little things that go along with it. It's a rough time for everyone. So, again, I'll say it. I've said it 3 times already today, man. If anybody out there just needs to talk, you could say that because there's been a couple days during this thing where I'm like, man, I just, I'm text messaging and Facebook messaging people I haven't talked to in forever. And they're like, we're all in the same boat. They're just desperate for any kind of human interaction a lot of times.
I'm with you.
So, all right, back to sports. So here's a question for you. I'll frame it and set it up this way. I want you to make your decision based on it's just 3 active players, but obviously all of them have different careers. One is significantly less than the other two. If you are an NFL GM right now, and based on all the information that you have, and set it up that none of these guys get their coaches, they don't get their systems, they don't get the players around them. You can pick Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or Patrick Mahomes to be your quarterback moving forward. They're all young too, okay? So, but you know how they're going to mature throughout their career. Who do you pick?
It's definitely not Tom Brady. I mean, and that's no knock on Tom Brady, but the other two are just in a class of their own.
Okay. Though a lot of people would disagree with you. They just think Tom
Nah,
Brady's that kind of a winner.
nah. I mean, well, I don't know. For me, it's no. So I lean Mahomes, but I trust Rodgers more. I'm not sure how much Andy Reid has like made Mahomes. I don't think that he's made Mahomes, but I think that marriage
And
has.
the sample size is so small.
Yeah, um, that's a great question. I'm a big Rodgers fan. It's hard to take anyone over what Mahomes did last year, and he got a ring already. So, like, man, it's hard to go against Mahomes at this point. I'm still going to go Rodgers, though, just because of that sample size. But I know that the upside's bigger for Mahomes.
Yes, because, again, you know what Aaron Rodgers has done. And, like, if you put – like,
Mahomes can win 5 titles. I mean –
he could. It's difficult for me to ever picture anybody topping Brady's title total. Like, there's just so much that can happen.
Right.
And, again, the marriage of him and Bill Belichick, we can argue about who deserves the credit. It was a great marriage. Obviously they just got divorced and it's done right now, but the two complemented each other very, very well. And as much as I think Brady was really set up to succeed with how things worked out, there's still nobody I would rather have. 2 minutes, 2 timeouts, got to go 75 yards for a touchdown. He is as cool as the other side of the pillow, and I don't think you'll ever find anybody that cool.
He's the best quarterback ever, but he's not the most talented quarterback ever. That's how I put it.
And I always say, like, whether you want to talk Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, John Elway, if you put John Elway in the same spot, drafted with this Patriots organization, he got to play 15 years under Bill Belichick, I feel like the results would be the same, if not better.
I
don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole, like, if and when, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to live by that. So I don't disagree with you, but he actually did it. And you can't fault him for doing it.
No. It's so crazy when you break down the 9 trips to the Super Bowl. And again, that's a much bigger sample size than most of the athletes we break down with the woulda, coulda, shoulda. But it's so weird when you look at this. And, well, I mean, we can get into LeBron in the same fashion. Like, Tom Brady's a couple of balls bouncing the other way from being 2-7 in the Super Bowl. And, like, people would talk about him as a loser. Like, they always could get there because the AFC was wheezed, but they can never win the big game very frequently. Or the flip side of it is he's a couple of balls bouncing a different way from being 9-0 and just thinking, man, 9-0 in the Super Bowl. How could you not just put him on, like, the Mount Rushmore as Tom Brady and then other people below him?
Tom Brady and every other athlete below him if he were 9-0. I mean,
right?
He'd be the greatest athlete of all time.
Because 9-0, when, like, you're a basketball franchise like the Bill Russell Celtics and whatnot, like way back in the day, is a lot different than 9-0 in the modern NFL era. That's something to, like, be marveled at. Just going to 9 Super Bowls, and we've talked about it. Like, the AFC sucks, right? Like, they just cannot get out of their own way. And he gets a cakewalk division title every single year because those teams are pathetic. But, like, 9 Super Bowl appearances over however many years, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's freaking impressive. So you can't take nothing away from him. No doubt about that.
So I would go Mahomes, though. I've seen enough over 2 years that I think there is a possibility that we can argue John Elway, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, that at the end of it, based on what I've seen, I think Mahomes could be up here and those guys could be down there. I would be willing to take that gamble. Again, with just 2 years of sample size, it's really tough to take that gamble because we know what Brady and Rodgers have done over, well over a decade. But I am such a big believer in what Patrick Mahomes has done, and I struggle to see him not keeping this up. He has given me no reason not to believe he's not going to do this for the entirety of his career. Yeah, he'll slow down when he's in his mid-30s probably because everybody does, and he is so mobile, and that will go away a little bit. But I would be willing to bet on Patrick Mahomes right now.
Injuries also, and I know that even before last year, like you're big on the Lamar Jackson hype train. So what about him?
I'm big on Lamar Jackson, but I was also bigger on the Ravens because I also love their defense and I love the way that they were winning games. But I would never, even when we had these discussions, I was never saying Jackson over Mahomes as my quarterback, though.
No, I know you were never saying that.
Yeah.
It was more of a fantasy love for Jackson.
Yes, because the rushing is so replicable every single week.
But no, I would never take him over Mahomes.
God, no, it's not even a conversation.
Okay, yeah, we're on the same page there. All right, speaking of that.
That's like saying Peyton Manning or Eli Manning. Yeah, right.
Speaking of that.
Okay.
Please tell me who the best player in the NFL, Major League Baseball, and the NBA will be in 5 years. And I'm holding you to this. That's the question.
All right, well, in baseball, it's still going to be Mike Trout because he's going to be 32 years old. But I will give an honorable mention to Ronald Acuna.
Okay.
So I think it'll still be Mike Trout. I think that'll be like the end of his prime right there, 32 years old. I mean, as good as these other guys are, I've seen Mike Trout do it every single minute he's been at the professional level, and he's doing it at an insane rate. As great as Miggy was in his heyday and Pujols and all these guys, like Mike Trout is 1 or 2 in MVP voting every single year for a good reason. And this is despite the fact his team's not even good.
Yep, you're right.
Okay. How about you for baseball?
Trout. It's Trout until it's Trout no more.
Okay. And 5 years is not long enough to kick him out for me. Like if you said 10.
Where we don't know. I was going to say 10 years is too far where we don't know like who's going to be there.
Okay. In basketball, in 5 years, I'm going to stick with Giannis. Again, that's the prime of his career. The arguments for who's better than him right now are LeBron, Kawhi, and KD. Well, KD is going to be 36 years old then? So, he's coming off of a serious injury. Nope. Kawhi's already got way too many red flags for his injury, and LeBron's going to be into his 40s, so he's not even a factor right now. Now, you want to talk about some of these young guns, Luka Doncic, Zion Williamson. I get all that. But the upward trajectory and rapid acceleration of Giannis Antetokounmpo throughout the early portion of his career, you sent me that thing the other day talking about Christian Wood saying he is everything the media makes him up to be. This guy lives in the gym. The way that he gets better every single year is amazing. So I'm going to stick with my boy on that one.
I'll stick with Giannis too, but Luka is coming up, and he would be the next guy I would go with there. Zion is a wild card.
Yeah. Giannis is always going to be 7 feet tall, though, in freak athleticism, which I'm a firm believer in defense, and he is so much better at defense than Luka. And I just don't know if Luka is willing, athletic enough, or has the demeanor to ever bring it on that defensive intensity consistency.
I'm wondering if Giannis will ever really develop that jumper. Now, he doesn't necessarily need to become the best, still be the best player in the world. And when I say a jumper, I mean how
LeBron is right now.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, he's never going to be like, JJ Redick, but like LeBron is right now. Will he ever get to that point? He might.
I don't know. That's like interesting because, again, we've been talking about this for 3 years now. The LeBron and Giannis. Now, the parallels end when you want to talk about how they came into the NBA, because clearly LeBron is as hyped as any athlete that's ever come into the NBA. And Giannis was a no-name to most of y'all. I only even really knew about him because I live in Wisconsin, and my buddy at work was like all up on his jock the instant they drafted him, telling me how he was going to be special. Well, clearly, Dan Rubin, if you happen to watch us, which I know you're not, you were 100% correct on that. Great early call on Giannis being a difference maker in the NBA, because you were right. Everybody else was wrong.
Yeah.
But he puts in the work.
Yeah, there's nothing to replace that. So I'm with you. And then I'm pretty sure we'll have
Patrick Mahomes for football. Yeah. How do you not?
5 years is a long time in football because you think about like the player turnover, only like the really good. Obviously, the great players are there for a while. But besides that, only like the really good to good players are there like for 5 years. I mean, what's the average, career span? Like 3 years. So there you go. So it's Mahomes for me. Now, there are other guys like it could be. We talked about Lamar Jackson. I don't see it, but
the steps that Lamar made from year 1 to year 2 in his throwing. Imagine if he continues on that upward trajectory, because as athletic as Mahomes is, Jackson's a freak.
Christian McCaffrey,
running back.
It's tough for a running back. Saquon Barkley. And the other wild card is anyone else coming into the NFL. That's the other big thing that you just don't know about. So, yeah. And then the other guy you talked about, Aaron Donald.
Yeah. He's great. It's just as great as he is, a defensive lineman can just never influence the game the way a quarterback can. We brought this up when we were doing a video last week. You're insane to ever really give a lot of credence to championships in the baseball discussion for who the best is. There's just too many other variables. Basketball players deserve some, more so than the other players. It's a little overrated in basketball. People give a little bit too much credence to
it's
winning.
It's only overrated because only one team can get it. But the individual player matters the most in basketball. I don't know if I told you. I don't know if I told you this, but I heard this one time. I think I might have. Baseball or football is all about the head coach. Like, not all about, but mostly about the head coach. Yep. Basketball is mostly about the star player. And baseball is mostly about the front office and putting together the team. And I think that obviously they all incorporate all of the others, but I think that's a good breakdown because it's true.
For sure. Not that we don't think that other things, like for example, in the NBA, coaching adjustments throughout playoff series is big. And that is where the Milwaukee Bucks really faltered last year, is they were outcoached by Nick Nurse. And maybe that's been a problem with Budenholzer's, unable to make mid-series adjustments.
But the point is, like, if you could give me the best NBA coach ever or the best player, like, I'm taking the player, like, no doubt. But in football, like, it's still hard not to take the player because the player means the most. But, like, you're thinking about it with, like, a Bill Belichick.
Right. Well, because we've all watched so many Patriots games over the last 15 years.
You just said it yourself. Like, you think that other guys could have stepped into Tom Brady's shoes and been that good. So that means you think Belichick is that good.
I do. And for me, when I watch the Packers play, which I do a lot, or if I watch the Colts play a lot, like I watched Peyton Manning make, adjustment after adjustment after adjustment and hit guys with, perfect precision accuracy on plays like that, where I'm like, that was all Peyton right there. When I watch the Patriots play, no fault to Tom, because again, I would give him, he is as cool as they come when it comes to making the play, and he's finding the open receivers. But I find guys consistently just wide open, uncovered over and over and over and over and over again. I'm just like, man, how did they fool the opposing defense so much? And it's just because he's always one step ahead.
Yes.
Danny Amendola does not. I mean, this is a 5'10" white guy. Right? Why is he wide open all the time?
That's a great question.
So I give a lot of credit to that. And you're right. Baseball's a little bit different because the best team doesn't win in baseball a lot.
No, I feel like, honestly, it's true with the GM and putting together the team, finding chemistry and finding those diamonds in the rough. Think about how Houston was put together. That was all through building the team. I mean, baseball is all about building the team. It really is, because I don't know. It's just, especially because there is a salary cap. So the other team, like the non-Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers of the world, really have to be strategic, because if you make one wrong move in baseball, like signing a guy that doesn't pay off, you're fucked.
Yeah, culture means a lot in baseball, because it's not just that this guy batted 300 and hit 40 home runs, because we've talked about this with Frank Thomas a lot. When did he hit those home runs? Did he get key hits? Did guys get up for one another? Were they supporting each other?
And I know all these sports are teamwork and being very close to each other. They're all a family unit, but no more than in baseball, in my opinion, where these guys are playing 160 plus games a year, not including spring training, on the road. I mean, these guys spend a ton of time together. So I think you're 100% right.
For sure. All right, next question. This is one that I'm not really going to have an answer for, but I know you paid a lot more attention to this than I did. What would be your punishment for the Houston Astros based on the cheating scandal?
That's a good one. That's a tough one. I think at this point, the fair punishment at least would be to strip away their title. It's already coming with an asterisk. There's too many red flags around it. I think that, people in their minds already view them as cheaters.
And just black it out in the history books?
Man, I don't know. It's tough, because on one hand, I think if you do something like that, it's too much. But on the other hand, if you don't, it's not enough. And there is no middle ground, really, because either you do something harsh or not. So I understand both sides of the fence. To be perfectly honest, I don't have a strong opinion on it. And for me, and I've told you this, or maybe I haven't, but I tell a lot of people this. I'm the type of fan where I don't hate other teams. I hate our rivals. I don't like the Steelers, but I root for my teams. I don't root against other teams. I just don't care that much. And I just don't care that much about this. I want the Indians to win a World Series. That's all I think about. That's all I care about. I don't really give a shit what they do with this Astros ring, if that makes sense.
Okay. I was curious. I know you were watching it with paying attention, so I didn't know if you'd have a strong opinion.
Like many other things with the coronavirus, that has died. Honestly, that will pick up again when baseball is back. But baseball might not even be back this year. And people, that's not going to last forever. The Astros might just have, gotten really lucky in that regard.
Sure. And the Patriots cheating comes up over and over again. But it's also because they've been like legitimately in the Super Bowl every other year for almost 20 years, right? And so you're always thinking of reasons to hate on them. We're all sick of them. And they've gotten caught multiple times kind of bending the rules.
Yeah, and also I do think the Astros are really good. Like they're talented, and I don't think that's necessarily why they won.
There's also a lot of like baseball players who say, I don't want to know the sign. I don't want to know what's coming. I need to react. And I don't disagree with that, because if you tell me like he's throwing a slider or something like that, like I can get why it doesn't help some people.
Me too, but I think it's the point that they had the option. Like guys like Altuve didn't want it, but the fact that other guys did, I mean, that's not fair. And the thing that bothers me most, and I know that a lot of players have spoken up about this, are the guys like, and we know this, we played DFS, the guys that went into Houston and got shelled and got sent down and never got a chance to pitch again. And who knows? They probably weren't any good anyways, but that sucks, man. Like, that just sucks. That's not fair. It's not what baseball should be representative of. So that is my main reason for why they should be punished. But again, I think it's a very opinionated question. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
All right. What's your next question?
Okay. So kind of like as a follow-up to my best player in all 5 years. And it's just tough because there's a ton of guys to choose from. If you could pick one guy in all sports right now to build around, and I know that players, individually might not mean as much as baseball, but I think Mike Trout is definitely in that conversation. Who would it be? Who would you build around? You have the number 1 overall pick in the sports draft. Who are you taking?
So, since we've talked about this already, and who it would, for me, it would be Giannis or Patrick Mahomes. I probably lead towards Mahomes.
Who would be your third? And then go into Mahomes versus Giannis.
All right. Again, I would never take a baseball player.
Right.
It's proof of the matter is Mike Trout has been the best player in baseball now for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. He's won 3 MVPs. He's finished second 4 other times. And he doesn't have a playoff appearance, I don't think. So I just couldn't do that. Who would be third? To build off of going forward. Kawhi's too injury prone. LeBron's old. KD's old. Probably Luka.
I was thinking both the guys we talked about earlier, Luka and Lamar Jackson. I'm also thinking about and I wouldn't take this guy, but this is how much the unknown is worth. You don't follow too much college football. And I know you don't follow too much mock draft stuff, but I'm sure you're aware the NFL draft is coming up shortly. Yep. And the number 1 pick is a foregone conclusion. It's Joe Burrow from LSU, the quarterback.
No way I could take a guy who hasn't played it down in the NFL.
Same.
I just couldn't do it. I'm sorry.
I agree, but if you think about it, I guess the counter to that point is I can't see many players aside from Mahomes, maybe Lamar Jackson, that Cincinnati would deal that pick for.
Sure. I mean, if you really believe in the quarterback position too, I think Russell Wilson still has 5 prime years left.
That's a great one. I definitely could get on board with that.
I like Lamar Jackson, but I was always bigger on the Ravens team. And Lamar Jackson is a fantasy player that I was that Lamar Jackson's going to go out and win multiple championships.
So, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that was kind of it.
So I got this question off of something that Max Kellerman and Stephen A. talked about a few weeks ago. Who is the greatest player in sports right now, between LeBron and Mahomes? And Stephen A. and most of the other guys talking on there, it's LeBron. It's not even close. LeBron. And you know how big of a fan I am of LeBron. But we've talked about this a lot. NBA players just inherently mean more than any other player in any other sport. They just mean by far the most. The fact that it's even a conversation, and this is what Max Kellerman says, between Mahomes and an NBA player says all you need to know. Now, I know quarterbacks are close, but they're not, though. I mean, they're the closest, but NBA players, the best NBA player, still means more than the best NFL quarterback, in my opinion.
But it's the only thing that's even close is NFL quarterbacks, because just think back for the last 15, 20 years.
It's hard, though, because this also doesn't translate into total wins, but a dominant starting pitcher. Because all they
only
can
for the playoffs, though, not for the regular season.
Right. Because all they can do is pitch. It's, one every 5 days. So their impact isn't being felt. But when they're – this is why I love talking
You're
about
just
this
thinking Madison Bumgarner against the Royals,
Like-
right? Like single-handedly putting the team on his back.
When a pitcher is pitching – now, again, they can only do this 1 every 5 days. They probably mean more than even an NBA player or a quarterback. A starting pitcher means the most.
If Max Scherzer could pitch 162 games, he'd be more valuable than LeBron James.
Exactly. So,
but he can't.
Okay. This just goes into. I love this. I love sports. I love all these topics. It's fun to talk about.
So, I mean, going back to the question at hand, though, like for me, if you think about quarterbacks and just think about the NFL for the last 15, 20 years, what we have is 2 Peyton Manning Super Bowls, one that you don't really give him a lot of credit for, 6 Tom Brady Super Bowls, which again, I don't give him all the credit because I think Bill Belichick's amazing, but it's Tom Brady in 6 Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers got one. Drew Brees has one. There's always been
Russell Wilson.
Most of these really, really good quarterbacks have been involved in that. There aren't a ton of times where we haven't had one.
Right.
So, but again,
even like Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, we talked about him. Say what you want, but like he's one of the lesser quarterbacks to have won, and he's still very good.
There are Trent Dilfer situations or Peyton Manning. Like Peyton Manning doesn't really deserve his 2nd Super Bowl, but it's like you feel like they need to give it to him because there was a lot of years he should have won it, but his teammates screwed him.
I forgot to bring this up on the last question I asked you, that I'm not putting him in this conversation of like guys that you would take, in the top 3, but I'm intrigued. Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I got to see more.
For sure. Oh, I'm not putting him there, but like the upside's real.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely got some upside right there. No questions about it. So, all right. Here's one I'm going to give you a couple seconds to mull it over after I ask it. This is obviously clearly a hypothetical situation. Our lifetime, if you could see any matchup in any sport, you can cater the situation to make it fit, what would it be? Would this be like, for example, a Rodgers-Brady Super Bowl? Is this LeBron taking on Michael Jordan, both in their primes in an NBA championship? Is it bottom of the 9th, bases loaded, guys on 1st and 2nd and 2 outs? I want to see Randy Johnson against Mike Trout. What would be to you like the wet dream of all hypothetical situations?
It's got to be LeBron versus MJ. Like it just has to be, I think.
Okay.
The two, because we talked about how individual players mean so much. One, it's hard to pick like one at bat for that. When I could pick a whole like series of LeBron versus Jordan or whatever it is. In that moment, the one at bat would be the most exciting. But that's just a one moment type thing. Like this is, to imagine LeBron versus Michael going head to head like both in their primes is.
Here's my only problem with that, because that was naturally where my mind went as well, is I don't think any of the LeBron teams would get anywhere close to beating those Bulls. So now if I'm starting over and drafting teams from scratch, it's a little bit different.
I was flying with that. Like it was basically like Jordan and 4 average players versus LeBron and 4 average players. Like that's how I was in.
Okay.
That's how I took it.
Because the best LeBron teams are probably those Heat teams. But even they weren't transcendent. They were put together poorly. There was a lot of talent with Bosh and Wade and LeBron. They did not complement each other in the slightest. When you look back at those old Bulls teams, even though there wasn't as much star power, because that's not how NBA teams were back then, they were well put together. The role players and the guys who you don't consider greats, the Steve Kerrs, the John Paxsons, the Horace Grants, they complemented each other really, really well.
No doubt about that.
So, okay. For me, like I'd want to see Brady Rodgers, but that's because of my Packerdom in that one. No doubt about it. And we got close to seeing it, but that was the Seattle game that screwed it all up. But it is difficult again. My natural reaction right away was to see LeBron against MJ.
Okay, the other thing for me though, like even to take it a step farther than you for LeBron and MJ. One, like it's LeBron, obviously being from Cleveland, like it's LeBron. But then number 2, like, and this doesn't get talked about that much, like Jordan owned the Cavs. Like that was the team that he like walked over and embarrassed Cleveland, shot over Elo. So that gives it a little extra incentive and meaning for me. I don't know.
I lean on your first point though, that like stars mean so much more in the NBA, and to see the best two players of our lifetime. But in a lot of ways, I would be more excited by Kobe versus Michael just because their games are the same. You know what I mean? And like, again, I think LeBron is a step above Kobe, but Kobe's made for a moment like that, and he would not back down. I can see this is another rare spot. I agree with Skip Bayless. And they were talking about him and Shan were talking the other day about LeBron versus MJ in a game of horse. And he's like, MJ would step up to the free throw line, nail a free throw, and look at LeBron and be like, I know you can't hit clutch free throws, and like get in his head. Nobody got in Kobe's head.
Yeah, but on that same point, like LeBron would do something crazy athletic that Jordan wouldn't be able to do.
Maybe. I mean, are we talking prime, though, young Michael Jordan? We forget how athletic young Michael Jordan was.
Okay, yeah, he was crazy athletic, but not like LeBron James.
Well, he didn't have the girth and the size. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe
he couldn't pass like LeBron.
No, but like, what if LeBron, like, Jordan was a great dunker, like, for his time. I don't think anyone would doubt that, like, LeBron, I don't know. It's a
physical freak. I think physical freak is different than athleticism if you want to look at it that way, because they were both super athletic, but LeBron was 2 or 3 inches taller and 30, 40 pounds heavier.
Okay. Yes. I'm not saying taking anything away from Jordan's athleticism, but LeBron James, in my opinion, is like the greatest athlete in sports. That's how I view him. That's a reason he's been so good. He's got a lot of that Shaq in him. For me, like, again, I played high school football in Ohio. Ohio's got great high school football. One of the greatest, not stats, but anecdotes about LeBron. And he was my year in high school, so I know all about this. As a freshman wide receiver, he was all-state wide receiver, and he already had an offer from Ohio State. Like, that is so impressive. He was the best receiver in the state, the number 1 ranked wide receiver in the state as a freshman, which is just crazy to think about. So, I mean, he's just special to me, obviously.
No doubt about it. All right, what's your last question?
All right, lastly, so I want you to do like a 1, 2, 3 here, but to leave it off on kind of a hometown note. Which one of our teams, and rank them as the most likely, second most, third most likely, which one of our teams are going to win a title first?
I mean, are we talking all 3 sports, all 3 of our teams?
All 6 of our teams, yes.
Well, I don't feel like I'm being a homer right here. I think all 3 of my teams have a much better chance than all 3 of your teams in the near future. And with the exception of maybe the Indians, just because like they have the starting pitching. But like you said, Lindor is probably gone after this year.
Probably, but I would actually say the Indians right now are better than the Brewers.
Right now, probably, yeah. Okay, so I would say the Bucks are number 1.
For sure.
The Packers are 2. Cleveland Indians 3. Brewers 4. Browns 5. And the Cavaliers in the distant 6th.
Agreed. Like, the Browns aren't close, but the NFL is very year to year. We talked about this.
The Browns were supposed to be good last year.
Exactly. So the Browns could all of a sudden creep up that list if they have a good year. Now, if they don't have a good year, they're all of a sudden going to need to look for another quarterback, et cetera. But, now the Browns are getting slept on again.
Yeah, the Browns could be the second in this conversation.
Yes.
Like, by next year. Cavaliers are like distant last place because they're nowhere close. You know what I mean? And in basketball, talent wins out. That's a difference.
The Bucks are distant first because of that too.
Bucks and Cavaliers, they set the curve right there. And then I think you got to give, the Packers were in the NFC Championship last year.
You can already pretty much mark down though that the Bucks are going to be in the second round of the playoffs, like at least.
Yeah.
So that compared to the other teams, you can't say that about any of the other teams.
No, they've already got even if you just say every team's even, they got a 25% chance.
Exactly. The other teams, none of them are even guaranteed to make the playoffs. Like, none of them. And the Brewers, Packers, and Indians are all good. The Packers they're all good.
Yeah. The Packers were in the NFC Championship last year. And
exactly.
That's a good argument right there. Again, I'm with you on the Browns 100%. They are obviously 5th place right now, but they're 5th place with the potential to move up. And then with the baseball teams, they're both teams that have been in the playoffs fairly consistently the last few years.
They're not going to win a title, but in baseball, anything can happen.
Anything can happen in baseball.
They're good enough where they could make it and anything could happen. but they're
right?
not teams where you go into the season thinking they're going to win anything.
Right, like it just in football, we don't really normally see the 6 seed win. We've seen it. The Packers won their last Super Bowl as a 6 seed, but it's unusual, right?
And in the NBA, it doesn't happen. The 8 seed doesn't win the title.
No, I mean, we saw, I think it was the 8 seed Knicks, right, that played the Rockets in the championship 25 years ago or whatever it was when Jordan was retired. I believe the Knicks were an 8 seed.
I don't think they were 8 because I think the first 8 to win was when Mutombo beat the Sonics.
Can't remember which happened first. Can you look that up real quickly?
Yeah,
I remember the Knicks were like they might have been 7 or something. I feel like they came back from. They had a really slow start to the year, and so they had they finished strong, but had to be like a lower seed in the playoffs.
Let me check this out. 1994 NBA standings.
We have time for this.
I see the Knicks were second here.
So okay. Maybe I'm
misremembering. Slow, or maybe I had the wrong year. Well, didn't they beat who'd the Rockets beat? The Knicks, and who'd they beat? No, they were good both those.
The Magic. They beat the Magic and the Knicks.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Okay, and I obviously it's possible I'm misremembering it, but forget the basis of the question. What was even the original question?
Who's going to win a title first?
Oh yeah, I mean that's kind of the way I look at it.
I agree.
Yeah, basketball, you just don't see it.
No, I agree with you on everything you said.
Definitely. So I don't know. I feel like we could do more of these just because they're kind of open-ended and it gives us something to talk about. I know today has definitely gone by a lot faster than yesterday did, where I didn't do anything and just sat there waiting for the day.
You also brought this up before we got on air. You're like, man, I haven't turned on the TV yet. It feels good. I don't like watching TV earlier, so doing this, I like having the interaction. Got my mind churning a little bit, thinking about what I was going to ask you, thinking about these questions. For sure. I agree with you. So let's keep doing them.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks a lot. Keep your sanity, man. It's tough these days.
Thanks, guys.